Hi, everybody. It's me and Maya, sometimes called Yaya. And so now I'm up to chapter 37 in Genesis. And I'm reading again from the Amplified version because I feel like it just fleshes out the meaning of the word so much better than King James or NIV or others that I've read through. So chapter 37 of Genesis, Joseph's dream. So Jacob, or Israel, lived in the land where his father Isaac had been a stranger, or sojourner, or resident alien, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, when he was 17 years old, was shepherding the flock with his brothers Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. The boy was with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's secondary wives, and Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. Now Israel, or Jacob, loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a distinctive multicolored tunic. His brothers saw that their father loved Joseph more than all of his brothers, so they hated him and could not find it within themselves to speak to him on friendly terms. Ooh, that's tough. I don't know how old these brothers was. Clearly he was a lot younger than most of his brothers. So I can't speak to how old they were and how mature they should have been at that age. But yeah, it's tough, as a child when you feel like the redheaded stepchild, and it's hard to be fair, or think in those kind of terms. And I think we've all felt the pangs of jealousy, and you see a side of yourself that maybe you don't often see, you know. And if you're at all self-aware, then you kind of have to ponder that, those feelings. But I think most of the time, we don't think about it too tough, don't want to think about it too tough. So anyhow, now Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. Now, clearly, Joseph is just such a young boy. And, when you're young, you just don't realize all the stupid stuff you do. And one thing that was stupid was telling his brothers who already didn't like him that, he was going to rule over them. So let's go on. Okay. He said to them, "Please listen to the details of this dream which I have dreamed. We brothers were binding sheaves of grain stalks in the field, and lo, my sheep suddenly got up and stood upright and remained standing. And behold, your sheep stood all around my sheep and bowed down in respect." His brothers said to him, "Are you actually going to reign over us? Are you really going to rule and govern us as your subjects?" So they hated him even more for telling them about his dreams and for his arrogant words. But Joseph dreamed still another dream and told it to his brothers as well. He said, "See here, I have again dreamed a dream, and lo, this time I saw 11 stars, and the sun and the moon bowed down in respect to me." He told it to his father as well as to his brothers, but his father rebuked him and said to him in disbelief, "What is the meaning of this dream you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers actually come to bow down to the ground in respect before you?" Joseph's brothers were envious and jealous of him, but his father kept the words of Joseph in mind, wondering about their meaning. Then his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. Israel, or Jacob, said to Joseph, Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, and I will send you to them." And he said, "Here I am, ready to obey you." Then Jacob said to him, "Please go and see whether everything is all right with your brothers and all right with the flock. Then bring word back to me." So he sent him from the Hebron valley, and he went to Shechem. Now a certain man found Joseph and saw that he was wandering around and had lost his way in the field. So the men asked him, "What are you looking for?" He said, "I am looking for my brothers. Please tell me where they are pasturing our flocks." Then the man said, They were here, but they have moved on from this place. I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. the plot against Joseph. And when they saw him from a distance, even before he came close to them, they plotted to kill him. They said to one another, "Look, here comes this dreamer. Now then, come, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits or cisterns, underground water storage. Then we will say to our father, a wild animal killed and devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams." Now Reuben, the eldest, heard this and rescued him from their hands and said, "Let us not take his life." Reuben said to them, "Do not shed his blood, but instead throw him alive into the pit that is here in the wilderness, and do not lay a hand on him to kill him." He said this so that he could rescue him from them and return him safely to his father. Now when Joseph reached his brothers, they stripped him of his tunic, the distinctive multicolored tunic which he was wearing. Then they took him and threw him into the pit. Now the pit was empty, there was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat their meal. When they looked up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, east of the Jordan, and with their camels bearing ladanum resin for perfume, and balm and myrrh, going on their way to carry the cargo down to Egypt. Joseph said to his brothers, "What do we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his murder, his blood or his murder? Come, let us instead sell him to these Ishmaelites and Midianites, and not lay our hands on him, because he is our brother and our flesh." So his brothers listened to him and agreed. Then, as the Midianite and Ishmaelite traders were passing by, the brothers pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit. They sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver, and they took Joseph as a captive into Egypt. Now Reuben, unaware of what had happened, returned to the pit, and to his great alarm found that Joseph was not in the pit. So he tore his clothes in deep sorrow. He rejoined his brothers and said, "The boy is not there. As for me, where shall I go to hide from my father?" Then they took Joseph's tunic, slaughtered a male goat, and dipped the tunic in blood. And they brought the multicolored tunic, to their father, saying, "We have found this. Please examine it and decide whether or not it is your son's tunic." He recognized it and said, "It is my son's tunic. A wild animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn in pieces." So Jacob tore his clothes in grief, put on sackcloth, and mourned many days for his son. Then all his sons and daughters attempted to console him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "I will go down to Sheol, the place of the dead, in mourning for my son." And his father wept for him. Meanwhile in Egypt, the Midianites sold Joseph as a slave to Potiphar, an officer in Pharaoh, and the captain of the royal guard. Okay, so I guess Joseph wasn't, I'm picturing Joseph as a 13-year-old boy, but I guess he's a little bit older. He's older than that. He's an older teenager, because I know that when he gets to Potiphar's house, what's going to happen with Potiphar's wife. So that would make him not really a boy. Hopefully she's not attracted to 13-year-old boys. Anyway, I'm going to look down here in the footnotes, and hopefully they'll tell us something more juicy. Okay, so let's see. Okay. Um, okay. So one thing, this is not in these footnotes, but one thing that occurred to me as I was reading is that what was I gonna say? They didn't just want to kill him because they hated him so much, because of their jealousy. And also, and mind you, they weren't just jealous of him because he was their father's favorite. Remember, his mother Rachel was their father's favorite, and their mother, I guess, hated her. So just see how stuff just passes down, from generation to generation. But anyhow, and even the secondary wives, Rachel was the favorite, you know. So anyway, let me go down and see what's here. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Okay. Okay, let me move on to Genesis 38. Okay, Judah and Tamar. Now, at that time, Judah left his brothers and went down to stay with a certain Adulamite named Hira. There, Judah saw a daughter of Shua, a Canaanite, and he took her as his wife and lived with her. So she conceived and gave birth to a son, and Judah named him Then she conceived again and gave birth to a son and named him Onan. Again she conceived and gave birth to still another son and named him Shelah. It was at Chezib that she gave birth to him. Now Judah took a wife for his firstborn. Her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord killed him in judgment. Then Judah told Onan, "Go into your brother's widow and perform your duty as a brother-in-law under the levirate marriage custom. Be her husband and raise children for the name of your brother." Onan knew that the child heir would not be his, but his dead brother's. So whenever he lay with his brother's widow, he spilled his seed on the ground to prevent conception, so that he would not give a child to his brother. But what he did was displeasing in the sight of the Lord. Therefore he killed him also in judgment. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, "Remain a widow at your father's house until Shelah, my youngest son, is grown." But he was deceiving her, for he thought if Shelah should marry her, he too might die like his brothers did. So Tamar went and lived in her father's house. But quite a while later, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died, and when the time of mourning was ended, he went up to his sheep shearers at Timnah with his friend Hira the Adulamite. Tamar was told, "Listen, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep." So she removed her widow's clothes and covered herself with a veil and wrapped herself up in disguise and sat in the gateway of Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah had grown up, and she had not been given to him as a wife, as Judah had promised. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a he thought she was a temple prostitute, for she had covered her face as such women did. He turned to her by the road and said, "Please come, let me lie with you," for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, "What will you give me that you may lie with me?" He answered, "I will send you a young goat from the flock." And she said, "Will you give me a pledge as a deposit until you send it?" He said, "What pledge shall I give you?" She said, "Your seal and your cord and the staff that is in your hand." So he gave them to her and was intimate with her, and she conceived by him. Then she got up and left and removed her veil and put on her widow's clothing. When Judah sent the 2 young goats by his friend the Adulamite to get his pledge back from the woman, he was unable to find her. He asked the men of that place, "Where is the temple prostitute who was by the roadside at Enaim?" They said, "There was no prostitute here." So he returned to Judah and said, "I cannot find her." Also the local men said there was no prostitute around here. Then Judah said, "Let her keep the things, pledge articles, for herself. Otherwise we will be a laughing stock, searching everywhere for her. After all, I sent this young goat, but you did not find her." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has played the role of a prostitute, and she is with child because of her immorality." So Judah said, "Bring her out and let her be burned to death as punishment." Wow. Okay. Talk about judgmental, right? Um, while she was being brought out, she took the things Judah had given her and sent them along with a message to her father-in-law saying, I am with child by the man to whom these articles belong. And she added, please examine them carefully and see clearly to whom these things belong, the seal and the cord and the staff. Judah recognized the articles and said, she has been more righteous in this matter than I, because I did not give her to my son Shelah as I had promised. And Judah did not have intimate relations with her again. Well, that's good. Now, when the time came for her to give birth, there were twins in her womb. And when she was in labor, one baby put out his hand, and the midwife took his hand and tied a scarlet thread on it, saying, this one was the firstborn. But he pulled back his hand, and his brother was born first. And she said, what a breach you have made for yourself to be the firstborn. So he was named Perez, breach or break forth. Afterward, his brother, who had the scarlet thread on his hand, was born and was named Zerah, or brightness. Okay. Okay. Chapter 39. Joseph's success in Egypt. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an Egyptian officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the royal guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he, even though a slave, became a successful and prosperous man. And he was in the house of his master the Egyptian. Now his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to prosper, succeed in his hand. So Joseph pleased Potiphar and found favor in his sight, and he served him as his personal servant. He made Joseph overseer over his house, and he put all that he owned in Joseph's charge. It happened that from the time that he made Joseph overseer in his house and put him in charge over all that he owned, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house because of Joseph. So the Lord's blessing was on everything that Potiphar owned in the house and in the field. So Potiphar left all that he owned in Joseph's charge, and with Joseph there, he did not need to pay attention to anything except the food he ate. Wow. To be that kind of person, that people can trust like that. And, just to have God's hand on your life like that like your blessings spill over. I would want to be, I wish I was that kind of person. I want to be that kind of person, And something occurred to me from the previous chapter. So clearly Joseph is like a grown man. He's not a 13-year-old boy, which means his brothers were more than grown men, because they were all, older than him. And still they hated him that much and were so emotional that they would do that. But I think also what occurred to me, I always thought that they wanted to kill him because they hated him so much. And that's one reason. Other reason they wanted to kill him is because, I guess they knew, I guess probably everyone in that family knew that Joseph would have these dreams, and that they would come true, that he really seemed to have this gift. So he's talking about he's going to rule over his brothers. They're like, this is bad enough. We got to kill him before this happens. So, that just hit me. Okay, so anyway, let me continue on. Now Joseph was handsome and attractive in form and appearance. Then after a time, his master's wife looked at Joseph with desire, and she said, lie with me. But he refused and said to his master's wife, look, with me in the house, my master does not concern himself with anything. He has put everything that he owns in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do this great evil and sin against God and your husband? And so it was that she spoke to Joseph persistently, day after day. But he did not listen to her plea to lie beside her or be with her. Then it happened one day that Joseph went into the house to attend to his duties, and none of the men of the household was there in the house. You have to be so careful. She caught Joseph by his outer robe, saying, lie with me. But he left his robe in her hand and ran and got outside the house. When she saw that he had left his robe in her hand and had run outside, she called to the men of her household and said to them, look at this. Your master has brought a Hebrew into the household to mock and insult us. He came to me to lie with me. I screamed. When he heard me screaming, he left his robe with me and ran outside the house. So she left Joseph's outer robe beside her until his master came home. Then she told her husband the same story, saying, "The Hebrew servant whom you brought among us came to me to mock and insult me." Then, as soon as I raised my voice and screamed, he left his robe with me and ran outside the house. You know, for men and women, you have to be so careful today. There have been times when I find myself alone with someone, even if it's you know, a family member through marriage or whoever. And you know what? I walk out the house because it's not worth the drama of he said, she said on either side. So yeah, let that be a lesson learned. You know, don't leave yourself in a situation that's up to interpretation and as he said, she said. Don't do that. You know, um, that's just one of my philosophies on life, one of my personal philosophies, and it, you know, it hasn't hurt me. I'll say that. Okay, so Joseph in prison, and when Joseph's master heard the words of his wife, saying, "This is the way your servant treated me," his anger burned. So Joseph's master took him and put him in the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were confined. So he was there in the prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and extended loving kindness to him and gave him favor in the sight of the warden. The warden committed to Joseph's care or management all the prisoners who were in the prison, so that whatever was done there, he was in charge of it. The warden paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's care because the Lord was with him. Whatever Joseph did, the Lord made to prosper. Wow, I want to be like that. For real. I mean, that's like so much character. So much character. You know, that people can trust you with anything. I mean, they really can. And that, you know, you are so righteous that people see the hand of God and working on your life. They see it. There's no doubt in their minds, whatever they believe in, they see your God is working for you. I want to be that kind of person. I for real. Okay. Okay, Genesis 40. Joseph interprets a dream. Now, sometime later, the cupbearer or butler and the baker for the king of Egypt offended their lord, Egypt's king. Pharaoh, uh, Pharaoh Sesostris II was extremely angry with his two officials, the chief of the cupbearers and the chief of the bakers. He put them in confinement in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard put Joseph in charge of them, and he served them, and they continued to be in custody for some time. Then the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, both dreamed a dream in the same night, each man with his own significant dream, and each dream with his personal interpretation. When Joseph came to them in the morning and looked at them, he saw that they were sad and depressed. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in confinement with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so downhearted today?" And they said to him, "We have each dreamed distinct dreams, and there is no one to interpret them." So Joseph said to them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "In my dream, there was a grapevine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. Then, as soon as it budded, its blossoms burst open, and its clusters produced ripe grapes in rapid succession. Now Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup. Then I placed the cup into Pharaoh's hand." Then Joseph said to him, "This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches represent 3 days. Within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head, present you in public, and restore you to your position, and you will again put Pharaoh's cup into his hand, just as you did when you were his cupbearer. Only think of me when it goes well with you, and please show me kindness by mentioning to Pharaoh and get me out of this house. For in fact, I was taken or stolen from the land of the Hebrews by unlawful force, and even here I have done nothing wrong for which they should put me in the dungeon." When the chief baker saw that the interpretation of the dream was good, he said to Joseph, "I also dreamed, and in my dream there were 3 cake baskets on my head, and in the top basket There were some of all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh, but the birds of prey were eating these foods out of the basket on my head. Joseph answered, "This is the interpretation of it. The 3 baskets represent 3 days. Within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and will hang you on a tree or gallows or pole, and you will not so much as be given a burial, but the birds will eat your flesh." Wow. Can you imagine if you got that and you got it from, you got that interpretation, you got it from Joseph. I mean, ooh, I'd be praying. But see, he don't know, he doesn't know God. He doesn't, know the one true God, you know, Elohim, he doesn't know that God, Jehovah. So he could pray, he could be praying, it wouldn't help. But but I'd be praying if I got that interpretation. Woo-wee. Okay. Um, let's see. Now on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he released the 2 men from prison and made a feast for all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker, that is, presented them in public among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his office, and the cupbearer once again put the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But Pharaoh hanged the chief baker, just as Joseph had interpreted the meaning of the dreams to them. Yet even after all that, the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot all about him. Yeah. Okay, so I'm down here in the footnotes, and that Pharaoh was also called Senusret II, and he lived. Wow, this is fascinating. So fascinating when the Bible matches up with history and science. And so Senusret II lived from 1894 to 1878 BC before Christ. So, ooh, right? So interesting. So he lived what nearly 2,000 years before Christ showed up on the scene. Okay, so and let's see what's the next thing. Okay, fine. Okay, chapters 41, Pharaoh's dream. Now it happened at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile, and lo, there came up out of the Nile 7 healthy cows, sleek and handsome and fat, and they grazed in the reed grass in a marshy pasture. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them out of the Nile, ugly and gaunt and raw-boned, and stood by the fat cows on the bank of the Nile. Then the ugly and gaunt and raw-boned cows ate up the 7 sleek and fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke. Then he fell asleep and dreamed a second time, and behold, 7 ears of grain came up on the single stalk, plump and good. Then behold, 7 ears of grain, thin and dried up by the east wind, sprouted after them. Then the thin ears swallowed the 7 plump and full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and it was a dream. So when morning came, his spirit was troubled and disturbed, and he sent and called for all the magicians and all the wise men of Egypt. And Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them to him. Then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, "I would mention my faults today. 2 years ago, Pharaoh was angry with his servants, and he put me in confinement in the house of the captain of the guard. But both me and the chief baker, we dreamed a dream on the same night, and he and I, each of us, dreamed according to the significance of the interpretation of the dream. Now there was with us in the prison a young man, a Hebrew servant to the captain of the guard, and we told him, and he interpreted our dreams for us, to each man according to the significance of his own dream. And just as he interpreted the dreams for us, so it happened. I was restored to my office as chief cupbearer, and the baker was hanged." Joseph interprets. Then Pharaoh sent and called for Joseph, and they hurriedly brought him out of the dungeon. And when Joseph shaved himself and changed his clothes, making himself presentable, he came to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I have dreamed a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. And I have heard it said about you that you can understand a dream and interpret it." Joseph answered Pharaoh, "It is not in me to interpret the dream. God, not I, will give Pharaoh a favorable answer through me. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, in my dream I was standing on the bank of the Nile, and 7 fat, sleek, and handsome cows came up out of the river, and they grazed in the reed grass of a marshy pasture. Lo, 7 other cows came up after them, very ugly and gaunt, just skin and bones, such emaciated animals as I have never seen in all the land of Egypt. And the lean and ugly cows ate up the first 7 fat cows. Yet when they had devoured them, it could not be detected that they had eaten them, because they were still as thin and emaciated as before. Then I awoke, but again I fell asleep and dreamed. I saw in my second dream 7 ears of grain, plump and good, growing on a single stalk, and lo, 7 other ears, withered thin and scorched by the east wind, and sprouted after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. Now I told this to the magicians and soothsayers, but there was no one who could explain it to me. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, the 2 dreams are one and the same and have one interpretation. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The 2 dreams are one and the same. The 7 thin and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and also the 7 thin ears dried up and scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine and hunger. This is the message, just as I have told Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Listen very carefully. 7 years of great abundance will come throughout all the land of Egypt, but afterwards 7 years of famine and hunger will come, and there will be such desperate need that all the great abundance of the previous years will be forgotten in the land of Egypt as if it never happened, and famine and destitution will ravage and destroy the land. So the great abundance will become forgotten in the land because of the subsequent famine, for it will be very severe. That the dream was repeated twice to Pharaoh and in 2 different ways indicates that this matter is fully determined and established by God, and God will bring it to pass very quickly. So now let Pharaoh prepare ahead and look for a man discerning and clear-headed and wise, and set him in charge over the land of Egypt as governor under Pharaoh. Let Pharaoh take action to appoint overseers and officials over the land, and set aside 1/5 of the produce of the entire land of Egypt in the 7 years of abundance. Let them gather as a tax all of the 5th of the food of these good years that are coming, and store up grain under the direction and authority of Pharaoh, and let them guard the food in fortified granaries in the cities. That food shall be put in storage as a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine and hunger which will occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land or people will not be ravaged during the famine. Now the plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all of his servants. Joseph is made a ruler of Egypt. So Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man like this, a man equal to Joseph, in whom is the divine spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since your God has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and clear-headed and wise as you are. You shall have charge over my house, and all my people shall be governed according to your word, and pay respect to you with reverence, submission, and obedience. Only in matters of the throne will I be greater than you in Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you in charge over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took off his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and dressed him in official vestments of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck. He had made him ride in his second chariot, and runners proclaimed before him, attention, bow the knee. And he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, though I am Pharaoh, yet without your permission shall no one raise his hand to do anything, or set his foot to go anywhere in all the land of Egypt. All classes of people shall submit to your authority. Then Pharaoh named Joseph Zaphanath Paneah, and he gave him Asenath, the daughter of Potipherah, priest of On, Heliopolis in Egypt, as his wife. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt to inspect and govern it. Now Joseph had been in Egypt 13 years and was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Okay, so let's see, he'd been in 13 years, 30, that's 20, 17. He was 17 when he was stolen, when he was sold. He was 17. 17-year-old man. Okay. So let's see. 13 years. Okay. And was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Well, a young man, right? But he had lived like, 3 lives by the time he was 30, so he was up to the task as a young man. Joseph departed from the presence of Pharaoh and went through all the land of Egypt, performing his duties. In the 7 abundant years, the earth produced handfuls for each seed planted. And Joseph gathered all the surplus food of the 7 good years in the land of Egypt and stored enormous quantities of the food in the cities. He stored away in every city the food collected from his own surrounding fields. Thus Joseph gathered and stored up grain in great abundance like the sand of the sea, until he stopped counting it, for it could not be measured. Mm-hmm. Okay. Um, the sons of Joseph. Now 2 sons were born to Joseph before the years of famine came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh, causing to forget. For he said, God has made me forget all my trouble and hardship and all the sorrow of the loss of my father's household. He named the second son Ephraim, or fruitfulness, for God has caused me to be fruitful and very successful in the land of my suffering. When the 7 years of plenty came to an end in the land of Egypt, the 7 years of famine began to come. Just as Joseph had said they would, the famine was in all the surrounding lands, but in the land of Egypt there was bread or food. So when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried out to Pharaoh for food, and Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph, do whatever he says to you." When the famine was spread over all the land, Joseph opened up all the storehouses and sold surplus grain to the Egyptians, and the famine grew extremely severe in the land of Egypt. And the people of all countries came to Egypt to Joseph to buy grain, because the famine was severe over all the known earth. Okay. Okay. Chapter 42. Joseph's brothers sent to Egypt. Now, when Jacob or Israel learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why are you staring at one another in bewilderment and not taking action?" He said, "I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some grain for us so that we may live and not die of starvation." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's younger brother, and his brothers, for he said, "I am afraid that some harm or injury may come to him." So the sons of Israel came to Egypt to buy grain along with the others who were coming, for famine was in the land of Canaan also. Now Joseph was the ruler over the land, and he was the one who sold grain to all the people of the land. And Joseph's half brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but hiding his identity, he treated them as strangers and spoke harshly to them. He said to them, "Where have you come from?" And they said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. Joseph remembered the dreams he had dreamed about them and said to them, "You are spies. You have come with a malicious purpose to observe the undefended parts of our land." But they said to him, "No, my lord, for your servants have only come to buy food. We are all the sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants are not spies." Yet he said to them, "No, you have come to see the undefended parts of our land." But they said, "Your servants are 12 brothers in all, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. Please listen. The youngest is with our father today, and one is no longer alive." Joseph said to them, "It is as I said to you, you are spies. In this way you shall be tested. By the life of Pharaoh, you shall not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here." Send one of you back home and let him bring your brother here, while the rest of you remain confined, so that your words may be tested to see whether there is any truth in you and your story, or else by the life of Pharaoh, certainly you are spies. Then Joseph put them all in prison for 3 days. Now Joseph said to them on the third day, do this, and you may live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined in your place here in prison. But as for the rest of you, go carry grain for the famine in your households. But bring your youngest brother to me, as your words will be verified, and you will not die. And they did so, and they said to one another, truly we are guilty regarding our brother Joseph, because we saw the distress and anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us to let him go, yet we would not listen to his cry. So this distress and anguish has come on us. Reuben answered them, did I not tell you, do not sin against the boy, and you would not listen? Now the accounting for his blood is required of us, for we are guilty of his death. They did not know that Joseph understood their conversation, because he spoke to them through an interpreter. He turned away from his brothers and left the room and wept. Then he returned and talked with them, and took Simeon from them, and bound him in front of them to be kept as a hostage in Egypt. Then Joseph gave orders privately that their bags be filled with grain, and that every man's money used to pay for the grain, that every man's money be put back in his sack, and that provisions be given to them for the journey. And so this was done for them. They loaded their donkeys with grain and left from there. And at the lodging place, as one of them opened his sack to feed his donkey, he saw his money in the opening of the sack. And he said to his brothers, my money has been returned. Here it is in my sack. And their hearts sank, and they were afraid and turned trembling to one another, saying, what is this that God has done to us? They returned to Canaan. When they came to Jacob, their father, in the land of Canaan, they told him everything that had happened to them, saying, the man who is the Lord of the land spoke harshly to us and took us for spies of the land. But we told him, we are honest men, we are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no longer alive, and the youngest is with our father today in the land of Canaan. And the man, the Lord of the country, said to us, by this test I will know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me, and take grain for your starving households, and go. Bring your youngest brother to me. Then I will know that you are not spies, but that you are honest men. Then I will return your imprisoned brother back to you, and you may trade and do business in the land. Now when they emptied their sacks, every man's bundle of money paid to buy grain was in his sack. When they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. Jacob their father said to them, you have bereaved me by causing the loss of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and you would take Benjamin from me? All these things are working against me. Then Reuben spoke to his father, you may put my 2 sons to death if I do not bring Benjamin back to you. Put him in my care, and I will return him to you. But Jacob said, my son shall not go down to Egypt with you, for his brother is dead, and he alone is left of Rachel's children. If any harm or accident should happen to him on the journey you are taking, then you will bring my gray head down to Sheol, the place of dead, in sorrow. Okay, now I'm down in the footnotes. Okay. Okay, so here, so it says in the footnotes, perhaps as many as 20 years has passed since his brothers last saw Joseph. They never would have suspected that the powerful Egyptian ruler standing before them was their brother. Okay, chapter 43, the return to Egypt. Now the famine was very severe in the land of Canaan, and it happened that when the families of Jacob's sons had finished eating all of the grain which they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, go again, buy us a little food. But Judah said to him, the man representing Pharaoh solemnly and sternly warned us, saying, you will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. If you will send our brother with us, we will go down to Egypt and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down there, for the man said to us, you will not see my face unless your brother is with you. And Israel, Jacob said, Why did you treat me so badly by telling the man that you had another brother? And they said, the man asked us straightforward questions about ourselves and our relatives. He said, is your father still alive? Have you another brother? And we answered him accordingly. How could we possibly know that he would say, bring your brother down here to Egypt? Judah said to Israel, his father, send the young man with me, and we will get up and go buy food so that we may live and not die of starvation. We as well as you and our little ones. I will be security, a guarantee for him. You may hold me personally responsible for him if I do not bring him back to you and place him safely before you. Then let me bear the blame before you forever. For if we had not delayed like this, surely by now we would have returned the second time. Then their father Israel said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choicest products of the land in your sacks and carry it as a present of tribute to the man representing Pharaoh. A little balm and a little honey, aromatic spices or gum, resin, pistachio nuts, and almonds. Take double the amount of money you owe with you, and take back the money that was returned in the opening of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take your brother Benjamin also, and get up and go to the man, and may God Almighty grant you compassion and favor before the man, so that he will release to you your other brother Simeon and Benjamin. And as for me, if I am bereaved of my children, Joseph, Simeon, and Benjamin, I am bereaved. Then the men took the present, and they took double the amount of money with them and Benjamin, and they left and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. Joseph sees Benjamin. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, bring the men into the house and kill an animal and make a meal ready, for the men will dine with me at noon. So the man did as Joseph said and brought the men to Joseph's house. The men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house, and expecting the worst, they said, it is because of the money that was returned in our sacks the first time we came that we are being brought in, so that he may find a reason to accuse and assail us and take us as slaves and seize our donkeys. So they approached the steward of Joseph's house and talked with him at the entrance of the house and said, oh, my lord, we indeed came down here the first time to buy food, and when we arrived at the inn after leaving here, we opened our sacks, and there was each man's money with which he had paid for grain in full, returned to the mouth of his sack. So we have brought it back this time. We have also brought down with us additional money to buy food. We do not know who put our money back in our sacks last time. But the steward encouraged them and said, peace be to you. Do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has miraculously given you treasure in your sacks. I already had your money, which you paid to us. Then he brought Simeon out to them. Then the steward brought the men into Joseph's house and gave them water, and they washed the dust off their feet, and he gave their donkeys feed. So they prepared the present of tribute for Joseph before his arrival at noon, for they had heard that they were to eat a meal there. When Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present of tribute which they had with them, and bowed to the ground before him. He asked them about their well-being and said, is your old father well, of whom you spoke? Is he still alive? And they answered, your servant, our father, is in good health. He is still alive. And they bowed down their heads before Joseph in respect. And he looked up and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's only other son, and said, is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me? And Joseph said, God be gracious to you and show you favor, my son. Then Joseph hurried out of the room because his heart was deeply touched over his brother, and he sought privacy to weep. So he entered his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, and restraining himself, let the meal be served. So the servants served Joseph by him in honor of his rank, and his brothers by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with them by themselves, because according to custom, the Egyptians could not eat food with the Hebrews, for that was loathsome to the Egyptians. Now Joseph's brothers were seated by the steward before him in the order of their birth, and the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at one another in astonishment, because so much was known about them. Joseph selected and sent portions to them from his own table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any other's. So they feasted and drank freely and celebrated with him. Okay, I'm back down in the footnotes. Okay, chapter 44, the brothers are brought back. And he commanded the steward of his house, saying, fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put every man's grain in the mouth of the sack. Put my personal cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest with his grain money. And the steward did as Joseph had told him. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away, they and their donkeys. When they had left the city and were not yet far away, Joseph said to his steward, get up, follow after the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, why have you repaid evil to us for good paid to you? Is this not my Lord's drinking cup, and the one which he uses for divination? You have done a great and unforgivable wrong in doing this. So the steward overtook them, and he said these words to them. They said to him, why does my Lord speak these things? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Please remember the money which we found in the mouths of our sacks we have brought back to you from the land of Canaan. Is it likely that then we would steal silver or gold from your master's house? With whomever of your servants and master's cup is found, let him die, and the rest of us will be my Lord's slaves. And the steward said, now let it be as you say. He with whom the cup is found will be my slave, but the rest of you shall be blameless. Then every man quickly lowered his sack to the ground, and each man opened his sack, confident the cup would not be found among them. The steward searched, beginning with the eldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes in grief, and after each man had loaded his donkey again, they returned to the city. When Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there, and they fell to the ground before him. Joseph spoke harshly to them. What is this thing that you have done? Do you not realize that such a man as I can indeed practice divination and foretell everything you do without outside knowledge of it? So Judah said, what can we say to my Lord? What can we reply? Or how can we clear ourselves, since God has exposed the sin of our guilt of your servants? Behold, we are my Lord's slaves, the rest of us, as well as he with whom the cup is found. But Joseph said, far be it from me that I should do that. But the man in whose hand the cup has been found, he will be my servant. And as for the rest of you, get up and go in peace to your father. Then Judah approached him and said, O my Lord, please let your servant say a word to you in private, and do not let your anger blaze against your servant, for you are equal to Pharaoh, so I speak as if directly to him. My Lord asked his servants, saying, have you a father or a brother? We said to my Lord, we have an old father and a young brother, Benjamin, the child of his old age. Now his brother Joseph is dead, and alone he is left of the 2 sons of his mother, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, bring him down to me, that I may actually see him. But we said to my Lord, the young man cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. You said to your servants, unless your youngest brother comes with you, you shall not see my face again. So when we went back to your servant, my father, we told him what my Lord had said. After our father said, go back to Egypt and buy us a little food. But we said, we cannot go down to Egypt if our youngest brother is with us. Then we will go down there, for we were sternly told that we cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife, Rachel, bore me only 2 sons, and 1 son went out from me. And I said, surely he is torn in pieces, and I have not seen him since. If you take this one also from me, and harm or an accident happens to him, you will bring my gray hair down to Sheol in sorrow. Now therefore, when I come to your servant, my father, and the young man is not with us, since his life is bound up in the young man's life. When he sees that the young man is not with us, he will die. And your servants will bring the gray hair of your servant our father down to Sheol in great sorrow. For your servant became security for the young man to my father, saying, If I do not bring him back to you, then let me bear the blame before my father forever. Now therefore, please let your servant Judah remain here instead of the youth, to be a slave to my lord, and let the young man go home with his brothers. How can I go up to my father if the young man is not with me, for fear that I would see the tragedy that would overtake my elderly father if Benjamin does not return? And I'm down in the footnotes. Okay. Chapter 45, Joseph shows kindness to his brothers. Then Joseph could not control himself any longer in front of all those who attended him. He called out, have everyone leave me. So no one stood there when Joseph revealed himself to his brothers. Joseph wept aloud, and the Egyptians who had just left him heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard of it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers were speechless, for they were stunned and dismayed by the fact that they were in Joseph's presence. And Joseph said to his fathers, Please come closer to me. Joseph said to his brothers, Please come closer to me. And they approached him, and he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me ahead of you to save life and to preserve our family. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are still 5 more years in which there will be no plowing and harvesting. God sent me to Egypt ahead of you to preserve you a remnant on the earth and to keep you alive by a great escape. So now it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of all his household and ruler of all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and tell him, your son Joseph says this to you, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay. You shall live in the land of Goshen, the best pasture land of Egypt, and you shall be close to me, you and your children and your grandchildren, your flocks and your herds and all you have. There I will provide for you and sustain you, so that you and your household and all that are yours may not become impoverished. For there are still 5 years of famine to come. Oh, I got on makeup. Let me stop. Um, let's see. There I will provide for you and sustain you, so that you and your household and all that is yours may not become impoverished. For there are still 5 years of famine to come. Your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that I am speaking to you personally in your language and not through an interpreter. Now you must tell my father of all my splendor and power in Egypt, and of everything that you have seen, and you must hurry and bring my father down here. Then he embraced his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. He kissed all his brothers and wept on them, and afterward his brothers talked with him. And when the news was heard in Pharaoh's house that Joseph's brothers had come, it pleased Pharaoh and his servants. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, Tell your brothers, do this, load your animals and return to the land of Canaan without delay, and get your father and your households and come to me. I will give you the best land of Egypt, and you will eat the fat, the finest produce of the land. Now you, brothers of Joseph, are ordered by Pharaoh, do this, take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come. Do not be concerned with your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. Then the sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the command of Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the journey. To each of them Joseph gave changes of clothing, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of clothing. To his father he sent the following: 10 male donkeys loaded with the goods of things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain and bread and provision for his father to supply all who were with him on the journey. And so he sent his brothers away, and as they departed, he said to them, "See that you do not quarrel on the journey about how to explain this to our father." So they went up from Egypt and came to the land of Canaan, to Jacob their father, and they said to him, "Joseph is still alive, and indeed he is ruler over all the land of Egypt." But Jacob was stunned, and his heart almost stopped beating, because he did not believe them when they told him everything that Joseph had said to them. And when he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. In Israel, Jacob said, "It is enough. Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." Genesis 46. Jacob moves to Egypt. So Israel set out with all that he had and came to Beersheba, where both his father and grandfather had worshipped God and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, "Jacob, Jacob." And he said, "Here I am." And he said, "I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you, your descendants, a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also surely bring you, your people, up again. And Joseph will put his hand on your eyes to close them at the time of your death." Ooh, that's beautiful. That's a good way to go. That's a good way to go. I could go like that. Oh, ooh, Lord. Okay. So Jacob sent out from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob and their children and their wives in the wagons that Pharaoh had sent to carry him. And they took their livestock and the possessions which they had acquired in the land of Canaan and came to Egypt. Jacob and all his descendants were with him. His sons, his grandsons, his daughters, and his granddaughters, and all his descendants he brought with him to Egypt. Those who came to Egypt. Now these are the names of the sons of Israel, Jacob and his sons, who went to Egypt. Reuben, Jacob's firstborn. The sons of Reuben were Hanok, Palu, Hezron, Carmi. The sons of Simeon, Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. The sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, Merari. The sons of Judah, Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. But and Onan died in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamul. The sons of Issachar, Tola, Puva, Job, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun, Sered, Elon, Jaleel. These are the sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob in Padan Aram with his daughter Dinah. All of his sons and daughters numbered 33. Wow. The sons of Gad, Ziphion, Hagi, Shuni, Esbon, Eri, Arodi, and Areli. The sons of Asher, Imnah, Ishvi, Beriah, and Sarah, their sister. And the sons of Beriah, Heber, Malchiel. These are the sons of Zilpah, the maid whom Laban gave to Leah, his daughter, when she married Jacob. And she bore to Jacob these 16 persons, 2 sons and 14 grandchildren. The sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, Joseph and Benjamin. Now to Joseph in the land of Egypt was born Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, or Heliopolis in Egypt, bore to him. And the sons of Benjamin, Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ehi, Rosh, Mupim, Hupim, and Ard. These are the sons of Rachel who were born to Jacob. There were 14 persons in all, 2 sons and 12 grandchildren. The son of Dan, Hushim. The sons of Naphtali, Jazeel, Guni, Jezer, and Shillem. These are the sons of Bilhah, the maid whom Laban gave to Rachel, his daughter, when she married Jacob, and she bore these to Jacob. There were 7 persons in all, 2 sons and 5 grandchildren. All the persons who came with Jacob into Egypt, who were his direct descendants, not counting the wives of Jacob or Jacob's sons, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were 2. All the persons of the house of Jacob, including Jacob and Joseph and his sons who came into Egypt, were 70. Okay. Now Jacob, now it's a big family. Now Jacob, Israel, sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to direct him to Goshen, and they came into the land of Goshen. Then Joseph prepared his chariot and went up to meet Israel, his father, in Goshen, as soon as he presented himself before him, authenticating his identity. He fell on his father's neck and wept on his neck a very long time. Israel said to Joseph, "Now let me die in peace, since I have seen your face and I know that you are still alive." Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I will go up and tell Pharaoh and say to him, my brothers and my father's household who were in the land of Canaan have come to me, and the men are shepherds, for they have been keepers of livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. And it shall be that when Pharaoh calls you and says, 'What is your occupation?' you shall say, 'Your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth until now, both we and our fathers before us, in order that you may live separately and securely in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is repulsive to the Egyptians." Interesting. I would think that that Egyptians would need to keep livestock. So that's interesting. Okay, so this is interesting. I'm down here at the footnotes. It says Benjamin was already the father of 10 sons at the time he met Joseph in Egypt. Joseph was 17 when his brothers sold him. He was in prison 13 years, and he had been ruler of Egypt during the 7 good years and through the 2 years of famine. So Joseph was 39 years of age at this time, and Benjamin was only a few years younger. Joseph and his sons were included in the count, even though they were already in Egypt. Yeah, so 70 people in all. Let's see. Okay, this might be the last chapter. Okay, chapter 47, Jacob's family settles in Goshen. Then Joseph came and told Pharaoh, "My father and my brothers with their flocks and their herds and all that they own have come from the land of Canaan, and they are in the land of Goshen." He took 5 men from among his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to his brothers, as Joseph expected, "What is your occupation?" And they said to Pharaoh, "Your servants are shepherds, both we and our fathers before us." Moreover, they said to Pharaoh, "We have come to live temporarily or sojourn in the land of Egypt, for there is no pasture for the flocks of your servants in our land, for the famine is very severe in Canaan. So now, please let your servants live in the land of Goshen." Then Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, saying, "Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best land. Let them live in the land of Goshen. And if you know of any men of ability among them, put them in charge of my livestock." Then Joseph brought Jacob, Israel, his father, and presented him before Pharaoh. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh asked Jacob, "How old are you?" Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The years of my pilgrimage are 130. Few and unpleasant have been the years of my life, and they have not reached the years that my fathers lived during the days of their pilgrimage." And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and departed from his presence. So Joseph settled his father and brothers and gave them a possession in Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses or Goshen, as Pharaoh commanded. Joseph provided and supplied his father and his brothers and all his father's household with food, according to the needs of their children. Now, in the course of time, there was no food in the land, for the famine was distressingly severe, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan languished in destitution and starvation because of the famine. Joseph gathered all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan in payment for the grain which they bought, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. And when the money was exhausted in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us food. Why should we die before your very eyes, for our money is gone?" Joseph said, "Give up your livestock, and I will give you food in exchange for your livestock, since the money is gone." So they brought their livestock to Joseph and gave them food in exchange, and he gave them food in exchange for the horses and the flocks and the herds and the donkeys, and he supplied them with food in exchange for all their livestock that year. When that year was ended, they came to him the next year and said, "We will not hide from my lord the fact that our money is spent. My lord also has our herds of livestock. There is nothing left in the sight of my lord but our bodies and our lands. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land in exchange for food, and we and our land will be servants to Pharaoh, and give us seed to plant, that we may live and not die, and that the land may not be desolate." Result of the famine. So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, and for every Egyptian sold his field, because the famine was severe upon them. So the land became Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he relocated them temporarily to the cities from one end of Egypt's border to the other. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had an allotment from Pharaoh, and they lived on the amount which Pharaoh gave them. So they did not sell their land. Then Joseph said to the people, "Look, today I have bought you and your land for Pharaoh. Now here is seed for you, and you shall plant the seed. At the harvest time, when you reap the increase, you shall give 1/5 of it to Pharaoh, and 4/5 will be your own to use for seed for the field, as for food for you and those of your households and for your little ones." And they said, "You have saved our lives. Let us find favor in the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants." And Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt, valid to this day, that Pharaoh should have the 5th part of the crops, and only the land of the priests did not become Pharaoh's. Now the people of Israel lived in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen, and they gained possessions and acquired property there, and were fruitful and multiplied greatly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. Wait. And Jacob lived, Jacob, yes, okay. He lived there 17 more years. Um, praise God. I'm glad that he and his son, Joseph, got to spend some real time together. And when the time drew near for Israel to die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, "If now I have found favor in your sight, please put your hand under my thigh and promise to deal loyally and faithfully with me. Please do not bury me in Egypt, but when I lie down with my fathers in death, you will carry me out of Egypt and bury me in the burial place at Hebron in the cave of Machpelah." And Joseph said, "I will do as you have directed." Then he said, "Swear to me that you will do it." So he swore to him. Then Israel, or Jacob, bowed in worship at the head of the bed. Okay, I'm down in the footnotes. Okay, so in the footnotes it says here, Abraham, Jacob's grandfather, had lived to be 175 years old. Isaac, Jacob's father, lived to be 180. Jacob lived 17 years after making this statement to Pharaoh, in which time he had an opportunity to get much more optimistic view of God's treatment of him. He died at 147, having said, "The angel has redeemed me continually from all evil." Okay. Israel's last days, chapter 48. Now, sometime after these things happened, Joseph was told, "Your father is sick." So he took his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, with him to go to Goshen. And when Israel was told, "Look now, your son Joseph has come to you," Israel strengthened himself and sat up on the bed. Then Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz, or Bethel, in the land of Canaan, and blessed me, and said to me, 'Behold, I will make you fruitful and numerous. I will make you a great company of people, and will give this land to your descendants after you as an everlasting possession. Your two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt, are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, that is adopted as my heirs and sons, as surely as Reuben and Simeon are my sons. But other sons who were born to you after them shall be your own. They shall be called by the names of their two brothers in their inheritance. Now, as for me, when I came from Padan in Mesopotamia, Rachel died beside me in the land of Canaan on the journey, when there was still some distance to go to Ephrath. I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. When Israel, who was almost blind, saw Joseph's sons, he said, "Who are these?" Joseph Joseph said to his father, "They are my sons, whom God has given me here in Egypt." So he said, "Please bring them to me, so that I may bless them." Now Israel's eyes were so dim from age that he could not see clearly. Then Joseph brought them close to him, and he kissed and embraced them. Israel said to Joseph, "I never expected to see your face, but see, God has shown me your children as well." And then Joseph took the boys from his father's embrace, and he bowed before him with his face to the ground. Then Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his and right right hand toward Israel's left, and Manasseh, go back, and Manasseh with his left hand toward Israel's right, and brought them close to him. But Israel reached out his hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, crossing his hands intentionally, even though Manasseh was firstborn. Then Jacob, or Israel, blessed Joseph and said, "The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked in faithful obedience, the God who has been my shepherd, leading and caring for me all my life to this day, the angel, that is the Lord himself, who has redeemed me continually from all evil, bless the boys, and may my name live on in them. May they be worthy of having their names linked with mine, and the names of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, and may they grow into a great multitude in the midst of the earth." When Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on Ephraim's head, it displeased him because he was not the firstborn, and he grasped his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. Joseph said to his father, "Not so, my father, for this is the firstborn. Place your right hand on Manasseh's head." But his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. Manasseh also will become a people, and he will be great. But his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations." Then Jacob blessed them that day, saying, "By you, Israel will pronounce a blessing, saying, May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh." And he put Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, "Behold, I am about to die, but God will be with you and bring you back to Canaan, the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given you the birthright, one portion, Shechem, one mountain ridge, more than any of your brothers, which I took, reclaiming it from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and with my bow." And I'm down here in the footnotes. Okay, it says this act of adoption effectively gave Joseph the birthright and a double allotment of the territory of the promised land when it was apportioned by Joshua. The second son, Ephraim, was named before his older brother because Jacob planned to give him the primary blessing. Okay. 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 Ooh, I've been going on for a while, but I'm still in this part of the story and I want to finish it. Israel's prophecy concerning his sons, chapter 49. Then Jacob called for his sons and said, "Assemble yourselves around me, that I may tell you what will happen to you and your descendants in the days to come. Gather and hear, O sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel, Jacob your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, the beginning of my strength and vigor, preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power. That should have been your birthright. But unstable and reckless and boiling over like water in sinful lust, you shall not excel or have the preeminence of the firstborn, because you went up to your father's bed with Bilhah. You defiled it. He went up to my couch. Oh wow. He never forgot about that, did he? I have forgotten that Reuben had slept with Bilhah, one of his concubines. Okay, so he goes on. Simeon and Levi are brothers, equally headstrong, deceitful, vindictive, and cruel. Their words are weapons of violence and revenge. Oh, my soul, do not come into their secret council. Let not my glory or honor be united with their assembly, for I knew nothing of their plot. Because in their anger they killed men and honored man, Shechem and the Shechemites, and in their self-will they lamed oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide and disperse them in Jacob, and scatter them in the midst of the land of Israel. Judah, you are the one whom your brothers shall praise. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's son shall bow down to you. Judah, a lion's cub, with the prey, my son, you have gone high up the mountains. He stood down, he crouched like a lion, and like a lion who dares rouse him. The scepter of royalty shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until Shiloh, the Messiah, the peaceful one, comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. Tying his foal to the strong vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine, he washes his clothing in wine, because the grapevine produces abundantly, and his robes in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker and sparkle more than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. Zebulun shall dwell at the seashore, and he shall be a haven, a landing place for ships, and his flank shall be toward Sidon. Issachar is like a strong-boned donkey, crouching down between the sheepfolds. When he saw that the resting place was good and that the land was pleasant, he bowed his shoulder to bear burdens and became a servant at forced labor. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a venomous serpent in the way, a fanged snake in the path, that bites the horse's heels so that his rider falls backward. I wait for your salvation, O Lord. As for Gad, a raiding troop shall raid him, but he shall raid at their heels and assault them victoriously. Asher's food supply shall be rich and bountiful, and he shall yield and deliver royal delights. Naphtali is a doe let loose, a swift warrior, which yields branched antlers, or eloquent words. Joseph is a fruitful bough, a main branch of the vine, a fruitful bough by a spring, a well, a fountain. Its branches run over the wall, influencing others. The skilled archers have bitterly attacked and provoked him. They have shot at him and harassed him, but his bow remained firm and steady in the strength that does not fail, for his arms were made strong and agile by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob, by the name of the shepherd, the stone of Israel, by the God of your father who will help you, and by the Almighty who blesses you with blessings of the heavens above, blessings lying in the deep that couches beneath, blessings of the nursing breast and of the fertile womb. The blessings of your father are greater than the blessings of my ancestors, Abraham and Isaac, up to the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph, even on the crown of the head of him who was the distinguished one, and the one who is prince among separate from his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey, and at night he divides the spoil. All these are the beginnings of the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father said to them as he blessed them, blessing each one according to the blessing appropriate to him. He charged them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave in the field of Machpelah, east of Mamre, in the land of Canaan. that Abraham bought along with the field from Ephron and the Hittite to possess as a burial site. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it was purchased from the sons of Heth. When Jacob, Israel, had finished commanding his sons, he drew his feet into the bed and breathed his last and was gathered to his people who had preceded him in death. Now I'm down here in the footnotes. Okay, Reuben was the eldest of Jacob's 12 sons, and therefore entitled to the birthright, which would make him successor to his father as head of the family or tribe, and inheritor of a double portion of his father's estate. But Reuben forfeited all this by his conduct with Bilhah, his father's concubine. By adopting Joseph's two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and giving each of them a portion of the inheritance, Jacob virtually gave Joseph the extra portion of the land that would have gone to Reuben. Judah became the tribal leader in Reuben's place. Okay, sorry guys, I ran out of space on my tablet, so I had to empty delete some stuff and empty the trash on my tablet so I can continue this. Okay, so where was I? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, it says here the fertile land once occupied by the tribe of Reuben was deserted by its settled inhabitants and given over to the tribal nomads of the desert. Because of his behavior, Reuben had forfeited his rights as the firstborn even before Jacob's prophecy. Okay. This prophecy was fulfilled when the tribe of Levi received no inheritance except 48 towns scattered throughout the different parts of Canaan. The tribe of Simeon was originally given only a few towns and villages in the midst of the inheritance of the tribe of Judah. Okay. And it says down here, the tribe of Benjamin invariably displayed courage and ferocity, particularly in their war with the other tribes. The tribe of Benjamin was absorbed by the tribe of Judah and is not mentioned after the return from the Babylonian captivity, except in connection with this former land or as the source of some individual person. Ehud, Saul, Jonathan, and the Apostle Paul were Benjamites. Okay, I've been reading a lot, and this is kind of still part of the story, but this story has been a especially long story in the Bible, but a good one. So I'm going to continue with chapter 50 tomorrow. And let's see. So, Lord, how long have I been going? So I started on it. I believe I've been reading since chapter 32. I believe I have. I think I just read chapters 32 through 49. So anyhow, God bless you, and God willing, we'll meet up tomorrow.